Get up to anything on the weekend?
Welcome to a special edition of the Collingwood Rant. I'm Sly.
And I'm Special Edition Spook.
Spook,
Yes!
get up to anything on the weekend?
Get up.
To anything.
Yes. It was a particularly nice game of football on. Did you happen to catch it?
AFLW game, was it?
Oh, yeah. We won that one too, didn't we?
Against the Bombers.
Did we?
Bombers are always there when we need to win.
That's it.
Like they were in 1990.
Well, 1990, something else happened that year.
What happened that year?
I think it was the introduction of the goods and services tax.
Oh, that's when the AFL started.
Was it?
Yeah. Fast forward 33 years.
There's no guarantee of good jokes tonight.
There's no guarantee of jokes. We won the flag.
Unfucking believable. Has it sunk in yet?
Your negativity.
I might be positive tonight.
Yeah. That'd be magic.
Wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, what was your question?
Has it sunk in yet?
Yeah, that was my question
Yeah,
to you.
I know, but I didn't answer it.
Yeah, no, it's fucking surreal as, isn't it?
It is a fucking astonishing win to think of all the games we lost, grand finals, we lost in tragic circumstances. 60, 64, 66, 70, 77, 79,
Hi.
81, 02. We, in my history, don't win the close ones.
No.
And guess what?
It's an incredibly un-Collingwood-like end to the story.
It is a phenomenal...
But that's not a bad thing. I
Well-
mean, when you say it's un-Collingwood-like, thank fuck it wasn't Collingwood-like. Thank fuck things are different.
It is a phenomenal end to think, alright, so going into the game...
How'd you go?
Yeah, I went. Sat in the heat. Dan McStay was injured. They were debating whether they're going to play Frampton or Noble. Very early they ruled out Taylor Adams. What do you think of the Frampton selection?
I think we talked a little bit about it. I think, despite
I
the
think,
fact,
I think we're going to talk about it on the show, though.
yeah, despite the fact he played differently than way we thought it was going to pan out. We thought he was going to be in defence. I think it was a Monty that it probably had to be him. I mean, you needed a tall.
Do you think he looks like the Lorax?
I think he looks like a thinner Barney Rubble.
Yeah, I think they obviously wanted to maintain their structures as much as possible. There's discussion about whether Howe would go forward and Frampton would go back. But then that would be making two changes to try and uphold the structures. So I think they went with the right thing. Frampton was obviously given the instruction just to negate. That was his priority.
It's a defensive forward to the nth degree, I think,
Yeah.
would have been the instructions. And I think the beauty of it is, and he's being pilloried a little bit about his, and I don't think necessarily from Collingwood supporters, but his lack of numbers and stuff wasn't anything to write home about. Didn't score the 2 touches for the game, I believe. But it's the work that he did in that role was epic. I mean, he negated any influence that Harris Andrews had for 3 quarters. 3 quarters.
Yeah.
Harris Andrews came into the game a little bit in the last quarter, but I think he did a fantastic job, Frampton.
Yeah. I mean, he was given, obviously, the instruction, just take him out of the game first. Anything else is a bonus.
Take him out?
Yeah, I wish it was that era. But the other thing, I think, too, is, I mean, when was the last time he played? About 6-8 weeks ago?
Yeah, it would have been.
And then he would have played in the VFL about 3-4 weeks ago. So he was really coming into the game with absolutely zero touch. Unlike, like Marleon Pickett, when Richmond debuted him against the GWS, he played in the VFL Grand Final the week before and then came in. So he obviously was running around playing football. So for Frampton to come in to that game with that pressure, with that expectation, with that pace, to actually just do anything was a fucking bonus.
That's a good point. They would have been through some intense training.
Yeah,
with him,
but obviously
nothing match practice-wise, yeah.
Yeah. What did you feel like going into it? Like, we talked about if we played Carlton, that I think it would have smashed Carlton, but like the nerves would have been...
I would have shit a pyramid if we were playing Carlton, the amount of bricks that would have come out.
Yeah. Would you have dumped it on Richmond's doorstep?
And I agree. I think we probably stood a better chance against Carlton. However, though, I don't think I could have fucking mentally processed that. Coming into the ground, and we talked a little bit about this off camera before, I've never seen a sea of stony-faced people like I did walking into the G.
I think that the stony face is sort of more our generation, young guys.
Yeah, no, there wasn't too many people that seemed to be happy to be there, if that made sense. A few of my mates were all of the same sentiment that we could have easily have stayed at home.
They made of stone.
Stone sediment.
Yeah.
So did I say sediment or sentiment?
I sound like sediment to me.
My voice is fucked. Yeah, you have to excuse it.
That doesn't help pronunciation.
Well, just call me Mark Robinson for tonight, and I'll dribble shit out of each corner of my mouth. But yeah, it was like that whole. I could easily miss this because if we lose, no one's gonna fucking cope. As one of my mates said, though, it's just that lingering belief that you can make it and win.
Which mate?
Peeps.
He doesn't fucking watch the show.
I know. Call him a prick.
Prick?
Yeah.
Because I was going to bring him up too.
Oh, literally.
Yeah. I'm just going to say, like, in 2011, when we lost to Geelong, I recall at the Cricketers' Arms post-game, you just made the point of, you have this phenomenal year, win 20 games, lose 2, and who do you play? Geelong, who had a phenomenal year and, lost 3 games and won 19. So they were, like, 2 genuine superpowers that year, and you compared it to, like, Essendon in 2000, when they won 21 games and lost 1. And who they play in the grand final, like Melbourne, who's clawed their way up there from 5th. Brisbane were a fucking really good side. And I think in about the last 6 to 8 weeks, they were really motoring along. Like there was a point there where people were saying Collingwood was the best side and it's their flag to win. And that was pretty much around the time our form dipped. And then I thought Port Adelaide in a little bit of overlap there. They were actually the best side at one point. And that went downhill when we beat Port. And then I felt Brisbane actually was the best side, like on form in the home and away season.
There was a recap that I heard on the radio driving just to fill everyone in. I was in Bendigo for a couple of days, so I had to drive from Bendigo back to Melbourne to get to the game. But we listened to a bit of the radio in the car before Kiss took over, and there was some comparative talk on one of the stations, Dribble M I think it was, and they sort of did a bit of a run through of seasons. It was amazing actually. Brisbane sort of paralleled us. They had a similar dip around about the same time, and as I was listening to that, they pulled themselves back out and thinking actually that makes me feel a little bit more comfortable going into the game, because like you have it in your head. I think when my concern was is that we hadn't been able to beat them this year. It's one of those familiar stories when we come up against an opponent at grand finals. It's not unusual for it to be one that we've struggled against, and that puts you in that sort of defensive mindset. This is going to be harder than it should be. And when I've heard that, I'm thinking actually if they're in a similar boat, and I wasn't particularly impressed with their performance against Carlton. They couldn't put them away. I'm started to think about maybe it's not going to be all doom and gloom. I think it's our natural state as Collingwood supporters to go into these things expecting to lose them. It's what's sort of been beaten into us over the journey. But on the day, I was nervous as all fuck getting to the ground. But once I got in there and you started having the discussions and all that, you're thinking, I think we could do this. We could do it.
Yeah, the Friday night, like I started becoming wildly optimistic. I don't know why. It just sort of popped up and I started thinking, this is what we're going to do after we win. We're going to go to this bar and this sort of shit. In the lead up to that, there was this quiet resignation of, we know how this goes. Can this side pull out the big wins? I still have question marks on the list, which maybe will come up at some point. I know like every side, now I was having a discussion with a Sydney supporter a few weeks ago, just saying, go back 20 years, clubs didn't really recycle players. Once they were cut, that was pretty much it. There was the odd exception, but generally once they were cut, they were gone. But now players are just constantly recycled. And that's because of the dilution of the talent pool means you got to just keep giving players chances and all that sort of stuff. But there were some problems now, in our list. I mean, you got Billy Frampton at full forward, who's never really played as full forward. You still got Mychek playing as an undersized key positioner. Darcy Moore's obviously key position height, but then there's no other key position height defender.
No.
Both Howe and Murphy play as undersized guys who are just really good overhead. And then, you look at stuff like the ruck and that, which finally, it seems the clubs realised about the last 4 weeks, 5 weeks. Hey, Mason Cox is a really good ruckman.
He's actually good at that stuff.
Yeah, I wish we could have said that 6 years ago.
Do you think the coaching staff sort of looked at him at training and said, hey, check out what this guy's doing?
Do you notice he's tall? He's tall.
he's hitting that red thing to our players.
He can jump too. So there's little problem areas, but then on the other side, you got Nick Daicos as a freak. The goalie fucking had a brilliant game in the prelim, and you know he's capable of that. Moore was really good. The one guy I sort of want to single out is Jack Crisp was fucking brilliant in the finals. I thought he had a really mediocre home and away season. After that little release of social media shit that was years old, he just seemed distracted for a while. But like the final series, he was really, really good. And he was kicking clutch goals. I mean, the 2 goals he kicked.
Oh, superb.
You know, especially that first one, which was on an angle from 50. And he did that last week against GWS, where again, he was on an angle and probably about 60 out. And I thought he was just really, really good. So here's one guy I actually think, when you have to make Premiership lists, you really have to find unexpected bonuses. And he's been an unexpected bonus in finals. I think sometimes the home away's form can be scrappy. But in the finals, last year, I reckon he was our player of the finals. And this year, he was really, really good. You know, and then we're watching the replay. Guys like Josh Daicos, I thought were a lot better than I thought.
Yeah. I thought, actually, on the day, I thought he was having a bit of a stinker. But it was only probably a couple of clangers that sort of stood out, but the rest of the time he was really effective. And the same though, when you've potted him all year, but Hoskin Elliott was the one that sort of surprised me about how effective he was as well.
Yeah, Hoskin Elliott was.
Do you want me to say it again in case they think I got that wrong?
No. Actually, let's sort of just break it down. So first quarter, we kicked the first 2 goals. Mm-hmm. How do you feel about? Well, how do you feel feeling then?
I mean, I talked about it last week that I didn't want to have that massive run on because it's shades of 2018 where they just get not. I think at that time they just thought, well, we've got a big enough lead, we just need to defend it for the rest of the game. And it was a classical fuck up. I wanted it to be a little bit of an arm wrestle just to make them realise that you're going to have to fight for this.
I can't recall which podcast I heard it on, but during the go we talked about it in 2018, they sort of go, what happened? He goes, you get to 5 goals ahead and it's almost like you start to go in the protect the lead mode. So, yeah, I mean, you're right about that. I mean, I had like one hope that we'd just come out and smash them and it would be like a 5, 6, 7 goal victory. And, you know, they might pull back a couple of goals, we get a couple of block goals once. And that was just for my own, you know, temperament in terms of I didn't want to be that stressed. But
I mean, in the scheme of things, 2 quick goals is good. I think Brisbane responded.
They got ahead. They actually went ahead.
Yeah, and then we finished off the quarter really well. We ended up with 4-4.
And about the last 2 minutes, and this is a really interesting. You get back to the 202 grand final, which was close. Brisbane really hurt us in red time. And in this grand final, we hurt them in red time.
Yeah, a lot of goals were kicked in red time across the
game. So, I mean, I can't remember the exact time, but my check did that.
Snap. Red time, I think, was the exact time.
Yeah.
Was it mauve time?
Red matter. But my check snapped from the pocket. That was a really good goal. And the goalie kicked from about 55 on the siren, like siren went. And that end actually had a little bit of a win. So that was a really win against. So that was a really, really good kick. So we suddenly went from like in deficit to now back in front of them. I want to just point this out. I mean, I've already had to explain to me why it happened, but fucking Brisbane should never have been allowed, or MCG, whoever the fuck's in charge, Gil McLaughlin used to be in charge, and they've probably sacked you for this decision. How the fuck can they play that country road at quarter time?
Well, they press play.
I know someone said it was a voting thing pre-game, but that is turning what's meant to be a neutral venue into a home ground. That's what they do with their home ground. They all sing it. So they all got up and about fucking singing his country road, and I was like, you shouldn't be able to do this shit. And I know we had our own song, but it's not actually parallel because that song is just a fucking song that I didn't even know existed for us.
It's a good fucking song, though. I mean, that's the
Lose Yourself or Country Roads?
No, Country Roads. Lose Yourself, I wish they would lose it.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is Lose Yourself is just a song that's played. Country Road is sort of, you know, it's like Kaisan for the Australian cricket team. It's like their second anthem and shit like that. So
I did wonder at the time with that, though, because it was being sung quite vociferously. Is that the right word? I think a fair few of our supporters jumped on board, and then the Collingwood chant tried to drown it out a little bit. I think people realised, hang on, I shouldn't be singing this. And then I stopped. But yeah, it's a good song.
Yeah, I just didn't think that was proper for a grand final. Second quarter, they just fucking jumped out of the blocks, kicked 2 goals. Special mention to Jack Ginnivan, twice on the wing from their stoppage clearances, out of the ball up. He had an opportunity to throw himself onto a smother and he didn't. And I was really disappointed because like they just went forward and they kicked goals. And it was like, fucking you need to sacrifice your body here. You need to just stop any offensive they have.
That was on your side of the ground,
Yeah.
wasn't it?
Yeah, so, and if you watch it, like, you'll see he's pretty close, and he does tried smother, you know. I mean, I always sort of talk about Dale Thomas back in 13 or 14 when we beat Richmond by like 6-7 goals. In the last quarter, we got 6 goals up.
Did we stop him from winning the flag that year?
Yeah, we stopped them, 8 in a row by stopping that first one. But, like, he dived fucking from miles away to stop a smother, like 15 minutes into the last quarter. Or sorry, smother a kick when we're 6 goals up. He didn't have to do it, but he did it, because that's fucking what you do. And you think you just do that sort of defensive efforts at that point, and there's a bit of inspiration. You stop their offensive. They drop their heads a little bit going, oh, fuck, this is not working for us. So I was actually really disappointed in that, but they really raced ahead. And like there was a feeling for me, I don't know what it was like for you, but that shit, they could just sort of establish a lead here, which we spend the rest of the fucking game chasing.
They got the match high lead then of 13 points
Yeah.
or something. I think we didn't get anywhere near that big.
That's 10 points. It's pretty close.
Yeah, well, yeah. I did have a moment where I thought, yeah, if they kick ahead here, we might struggle to pull that back. But it was such a yin and yang game. It wasn't like an overwhelming fear. Yeah. You just sort of thought, oh, you know, they've had their little run. The tempo's probably going to swing back our way. And, you know, we dob a couple in and you know, things are back to level, which is what ended up happening.
I think they kicked like 5 out of 6 goals.
Yeah.
We also had to contend with Nathan Murphy going off. He technically wasn't concussed, but he ruled himself out.
That was my biggest flag-waving panic moment. I couldn't, at that time, see how we could do it without him. Because he's
was something in your way.
We're losing a tall... no, we were losing such a tall, prolific spoiler. And you had nobody to come...
And he was actually really good in that first quarter too.
I just thought, oh, that's it. They'll exploit that, and yeah, that's it. That's all she's wrote. But that feeling, again, the same thing, it didn't last long. There's just something strange in the air about that game. Things were just like, everything had been so unorthodox going in that these moments that would normally set you off into a blind panic just sort of abated really quick. And you thought, oh, no, we're better than this. We'll adapt.
Yeah, I can't remember who I said it to. I said like one of our small forwards needs to get off the leash, and just.
Did you point to Bobby Hill at that point?
No, well, I actually didn't include him because I was thinking with him, he's going to get a couple anyway, and it's like those unexpected bonuses. Like you go back to 202, people point to the Rocker point that should have been a goal, or should have been paid a goal as like, well, that was the determining factor. Well. Leon Davis got 0 touches. I don't think Bafara's got a goal. I don't think Nick Davis got a goal. You just needed one of those guys to sort of do a little bit of something. And that was like where I was thinking, like, you know, you need a game where like McCreary kicks 3. And you wouldn't expect that from him. You know, or Ginnivan has like that really big game he kicks 4. Like, he'll actually expect it to kick 1 or 2. But he was really fucking good. And, I mean, to an extent, he actually kept us not only in touch, but then when we overhauled him, you know, he was doing stuff like he took that beautiful mark over Starcevic. He did that snap where he feigned one way, then came back
through, yeah.
And he was actually really just good in, like, having him there was obviously causing them a lot of fucking headaches, which they couldn't match up, and they couldn't work out. He had speed, he was beating him in the air, he was fucking beating him on the ground. And it was just a really beautiful game. And, you know, it was the sort of game where Coleman was dominant in the first quarter, but sort of faded a little bit. But Hill, in that first half, was really fucking dominant. In the second half, he didn't actually convert on the score, but he was still dominant.
He was still prolific.
Yeah, on the field. So he was really, really good. And then you had other guys, like, I mean, Crisp again had a couple of goals. And we went from, oh, shit, you know, if they could break this open to, we're back in front. You know, we're 6 points in front. So half-time, how do you feel at that point?
I took a lot of solace out of the fact that in both quarters we were challenged and we still finished the quarters with our nose in front. You know, I think it's that thing about sometimes when the game is played above the head that you need those moments where you think, okay, we're at chance here. Yeah, I think Brisbane gave, you know, their best shot in 2 of those quarters, and we just kept getting back in front. The resilience of this group on this particular day was phenomenal in that respect. It's just like we didn't want to be headed at any particular time. We just get back in front. And I think coming off the ground, you're going, fucking hell, we tried hard there and we still can't finish a quarter with our nose in front. I think that sort of, I don't know, whether it didn't rattle Brisbane, but I think it must have had them second guessing a little bit. it would have given us confidence that, we've taken their best punches and we're still clawing our way back in front each time. And I think that's, you come off and I reckon you walk a little bit taller.
Yeah.
Except unless you're Murphy.
McRae, has said repeatedly throughout the year that, the incredible self-belief in his team, and you actually started to feel it, but they had some semblance of no panic, regardless of what was going on. Like, they're always in it. When we were talking previously off camera, you were sort of saying we really dominated them for large points. It's just we didn't often translate that, onto the scoreboard. So the third quarter, after the Mark Seymour performance, they just roll him out for grand finals.
He's there to save the footy.
It's just like cryogenic freeze. You have Mike Brady, Mark Seymour, and then some band from the 80s that they pop out for the grand final entertainment. Do you think they've actually considered ever getting a contemporary artist?
Like who?
Oh, fucking, I don't know, Lady Gaga? Someone like that?
I'm sure she stays awake at night waiting next to the phone for that call.
Well, I heard they're trying Mozart for next year's pre-game.
John Denver.
I am not going there. Third quarter, I remember I was looking at the scoreboard. We dominated for about 12 minutes and just
couldn't convert.
Yeah. And then they started, again.
And that was that thing, like, there was a comparison at that point. Were they about 7-1 there for a period?
Yeah.
And we were 5.
I think we got ahead in points a couple of times.
And you're looking at that going, I don't want that to continue. I just don't want to. We're doing all the hard work here. I think we're controlling the tempo of the game. We're just not putting it on the scoreboard. And I don't want to lose because of that. Yeah, but then the point tally just kept going up. You think, it's fucking as good as a couple of goals.
Yeah. Look, and the thing too, I think as the game went on, it's like, okay, we're covering Murphy, okay.
Oh, yeah, I still can't work out how they managed to pull that off.
There was a couple of, like Nick Daicos went down at one stage where they smothered and you could see he was down for a little bit and it was the same leg. Was that a pants-filling moment? And his father Peter said after the game that his injury should have been a 3-month rehab and he was back in 6 weeks.
Yeah, I read that. I couldn't... It was hard to believe that he was going to get up and obviously he'll be sore, I think, for quite a while in the off-season and he can have a good rest now.
Well,
but
you had Darcy Moore also like carrying
the ankle injury and a wrist injury. Yeah. Which I think Darcy was certainly down on his usual output.
And they said, and like they actually revealed that Mitchell almost was a late withdrawal against GWS with back injury. And I know like a lot of players would be carrying in niggles, and similarly for Brisbane, there would have been players who are carrying in niggles that you don't really hear about. But I think with us, I mean those two guys there, Nick Daicos and Moore, they're like two guys you really need to be firing.
Oh, you lose both of them, you don't win. It's as simple as that. Especially Nick. Yeah, and when he had that knee thing and he was holding his leg and he was slow to get up, you think, oh fuck, I hope it hasn't done more damage. But geez, I tell you, if he was sore, he didn't show it.
No, he was really good. And look, he's got some time off now, so they'll completely rehab it and all that sort of stuff.
A lot of them be high on that much adrenaline at that point that you certainly wouldn't feel that pain till way later on after the game.
Yeah. Otherwise, you can just hit the Gatorade. At three-quarter time, it was 11-5 Brisbane. That's 71 to us, 10-15. It'll be 75. What were your feelings going into this last quarter?
Yeah, there's a sort of, it's not dread. It's that knowledge that that's it. This is it. This is the without being stupid. This is the last quarter. You've got to win this one to win the game. It's like simple thoughts like that. There's no second chances or anything, unless of course they happen to draw.
Barnes is there.
But if they were actually thinking if it ended up being a draw, what are we doing now? 2 lots of 6 minutes or something like that. They don't come back next week anymore. Thank fuck. But it was just like you're going through all the permutations of what can possibly happen. The most appealing one was just go out and just fucking turn it on. Have one of those last quarters where you just have a stream of 5 or 6 goals. That's probably how I really hoped the game would pan out, even last week. But it ended up being a fucking epic arm wrestle.
Yeah, so I think, again, we sort of dominated without actually putting him away.
Yep. I think even throughout that quarter, probably up until about 5 minutes and 53 seconds or whatever it was, I thought we controlled the tempo of the game really well.
Yeah.
That it just sort of felt like, okay, I think we're heading into that section of the game where we do it best. And I think Brisbane would certainly have been thinking the same thing here, that they're going to either have to crack it open or these pricks are going to hold on.
Yeah.
And then I think it was all going beautifully to plan, and then
Cameron,
that spill, and like I remember it was like that fucking slow motion moment, thinking, someone's because Maynard I think went to ground, lost his footing, and I think Quaynor was trying to chase him down from memory, and it looked like for a second there the ball was spilling, and I mean he's got fucking class, Cameron. The way he sort of just scooped it up and bombed it, it was just like, oh, not again. That was that moment where, fucking hell. I mean, you looked at the scoreboard and you think, there's enough time. Yeah, we can come back from this. But it was just the first of that fucking hell, they're going to do it again type moments. But that's that natural, I think, fear that you have.
Oh, look, I mean...
I didn't succumb to it. It just was that flash of fuck.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, regardless of our history with close ones, any team to give up a lead at that point, I mean, there was 10 lead changes, so that was the 9th. Any team that gave up a lead at that point, you'd be thinking, fuck, because there could be like 5 minutes of ball ups pretty much, unless someone like one of the umpires, like Stevie or someone, gives a really stupid free.
But, conversely, 19 seconds later, we gold. Well, I think that happened so brilliantly quick, it took away your ability to start.
Well, Craig McLaren, he said the midfielders got together and talked about what they're going to do. And Cox got the tap, Nick Daicos handball the Pendles. Nick Daicos just then bolted forward. Pendles snapped it around.
Spilled forward.
My check went for a mark, got spoiled, went to Nick, he did his flick handball in midair.
Was that handball too?
And the goalie, it was like because it was a little bit behind the handball, the goalie controlled it perfectly and on the run just fucking nailed. Beautiful goal from about 50. And... very similar to the 218 one. He actually kicked a beautiful goal on the run the last quarter from a side-bottom handball. I mean, you look at the go and you think, we see all the trouble and shit that gets associated with him at times, but he can seriously fucking play.
Fuck, I don't think he can. But I think also, too, across that whole moment, this is what they fucking practice. Yeah, McRae alluded to as much without giving too much away on AFL 360 that we watched before. That they drill this moment. They go through the scenarios and they play through what can happen. Like you said, getting a centre clearance goal, it's not an easy thing to pull off.
Yeah.
Fuck, they made it look easy though. And I think it caught Brisbane by surprise. They just didn't know where to react. It was like an orchestrated manoeuvre that you've done it so well that you're executing it so superbly that you don't have time to think about where are they going, what are they doing. It's already happened.
I've seen that sort of shit happen to us. You go back to again 2018. I think it was after the Goey goal, went to a ball up. Grundy, remember him? He got pinged for a ruck infringement. Lysette kicked it forward. Vardy Mark kicked the goal. So that advantage from the Goey's goal just was eradicated in seconds. And that was the same to them. It must have been the deflating moment to we just got the lead and now they're in front again. And you'd have to think they understand the psychology of a game that when Collingwood has leads in close lines, they tend to hold on to them under McRae. And then the side bottom 50 from Berry. I don't know what Berry was thinking.
Oh, it's you were saying at the time he's cost him the game. It was just an epic moment of stupidity. He's already marked the ball. There is nothing to be gained by tackling him to the ground at that stage. He was just obviously had a fucking massive brain fart.
You see a lot of really questionable 50s, which we'll talk about in a minute too. You see a lot of questionable 50s. That one was almost like 100% of the time. No umpire should never call that one. It was so fucking blatantly wrong that the umpire just called it straight away. Because it was fucking like pretty much a swing around type tackle too. Yeah. And, side bottom was, am I going to pass it? But he sort of backed himself. There's a bit of a wing going to that side. He puts us 10 points up.
Yep. I read after the fact that I think that's only the 9th time in his entire career that he's kicked a goal from outside 50. Well, what a fucking occasion to do it in.
Yeah. And then we had a couple of opportunities. There's one where Frampton finally got in front of Andrews, and he probably should have marked, but he played him more like a defender, and Andrews sort of slipped in front.
He did that a couple of times. I think it's old habits.
Yep.
Not that he's spent a lot of time playing as a defender either. But I don't know whether he got confused by his own instructions. I think there are times when you looked, and that's probably the only criticism you could have of him, where you're thinking, if you're an experienced forward, you would have fucking swallowed a few of these things. But
he played pretty much every attack, except for that one lead where he dropped it. He pretty much played that position like a fullback.
Yeah, he had his back to the ball as he was coming in more often than not.
And he got pinged in that last quarter a couple of times for holes. They were pretty soft.
But I think his clear instruction was not necessarily go out there and mark and kick a couple. It was just to bring it to the ground, let the little blokes do their job.
Yeah. And then Chris took a mark about 55 metres out. I reckon he should have taken the shot, but I understand why they didn't do it. And Pendlebury told him, no, kick it sideways, will kill some time. And you heard McRae talking on AFL 360 about there's periods where you can just kill time. And, obviously it accumulates. So obviously that was all they were thinking. But that feeling was at 10 points up, if we get one more, it's over.
Yeah, I think he did say that there was some discussion on the bench about, are we doing the right thing at this stage? Yeah. Because they expected to sort of, was it ice the game at that point? Yeah. But he wanted one more. I think and I remember sitting there thinking one more kills this game. Yeah. And I think that was like he rolled the dice a little bit on that one, whereas they probably, but at the same time, it almost felt like they were going a little bit too early to try and slow the tempo of the game down. I think if you'd gone in, I think attack was the right thing to do, and to probably back yourself and just because they were doing so much of that surge football at that point, and it was working really well. That I think the mantra should have probably been just to keep going, get that one extra one. Let's just put it without doubt.
Yeah, I mean, my concern too was a lot of Brisbane's goals. They were just like, it seemed like we're controlling it, and then they just sort of got out, and then it was, sort of manufacturing things from stuff where you thought we had control, and that goes to the next goal, which was the McCluggage on the boundary, shrugs the tackle.
Did you have Wayne Harmon's moments at that point?
Look, people, we'll go into umpiring a little bit later, but like freeze, I think umpiring's fucked all across the board. I think there's a lot of things they do wrong, and I don't blame the umpires, I blame the AFL because they're the ones instructing them as to what interpretation should be. And I remember Cray said this last year, I can't remember what the fucking decision was, there's some deplorable decision, and he was, I think it was like actually when Murphy got hit in the head in the Adelaide game, and they're going, well, did you rue that? And he's going, well, what can you do about it? And that's sort of like got to look at the umpiring. I think it's shit. I think it can influence games, but once that decision's paid, they're not going to review it and come back and go, okay, we're going to overturn it. Mm. So that one was like, I don't know, who gives a fuck? I actually hope now that we've won that it was out of bounds.
I don't know. I think he kept it in. Like, he was clearly out of bounds.
Yeah.
But he kept the ball in. But you were having that panic moment. Like, I think I wanted him to take it out of bounds, and then they'll have the stoppage. I think our intent was probably to take it over the line. But just to bring it back in and kick it straight to Danaher, who was on his own. What were we at that point? That was 93 seconds when he played on?
Oh, no, he kicked it in, and the time stopped at 93 seconds remaining.
It was just like, again, it was like, fuck. But that fuck thing quickly became, but we're still 4 points up. All we're going to do is just lock it in the centre and try and get some control of the ball.
And somehow we didn't do that.
I gave it a good old crack. I mean, I thought there's a couple of times we're going to lock it in.
Well, actually, there's one period there. Let's go forward because that's going to go into the umpiring. So they go forward. Everyone's talking about the advantage. What do you feel about that?
Look, I think at the time I didn't even realise the whistle had been blown.
I
thought they just were playing on and they booted. I didn't realise there was a free paid. The free was paid, wasn't it? Yeah, and then
the legging.
Now, that dude, did the umpires get it wrong or whatever it is? He flagged, and this is the problem I think you're alluding to, is the advantage rule is this much text and 84 subsets.
Yeah.
Now, he circled one that said that any intent to kick the ball forward can be taken as advantage. And I think the key thing inside of that is that there is no fucking rule for bringing it back if it's bad advantage. So I think you're trying to overlay a sense that it has to be good advantage to be advantageous. Generally, I think that's the intent of the rule, but you can still fuck up advantages. Plenty of players do it. And it doesn't become advantage. So I think you some of that is rolling the dice at the same time.
Ironically, you go back like about 25 years, 30 years, because the advantage wasn't very often paid years ago. And that's why they gave the agency to the players to decide, I'm going to take it, I'm not going to take it. But I recall like when they used to pay it, they used to leave it totally in the purview of the umpires. And I do recall seeing umpires going, like, paying the advantage or, like, just letting the play go and then stop and go, okay, that didn't turn out to be an advantage, let's bring it back. So if that rule was still in play or that interpretation was still in play, the umpire, I'm sure, would have called it back. In this case, you know, it was just sort of playing on so quickly and all that sort of shit. But it kills me that, you know, someone sent a meme out today, I think it was Gary who ran for the board. He was just saying, well, you look at the Maynard block in 18, fine. You know, you look at the Papley push on Moore, fine. But now Brisbane get a stiff one, and it's like, oh, well, fucking the game's rigged. You know, AFL wanted Collingwood to win. I mean, even though the free kicks were 16-22.
Well, I mean, they would have obviously known that moment was going to happen to be that precise. Look, you know, at the end of the day, fuck it didn't happen to us for a change.
But I was going to say, I mean, look, I've never blamed the Maynard block. It's because there's a lot of shit happens in the fucking game. You go to this game, I think they were like 4 free kicks to 1. They got that first one when Moore tackled Hipwood and he fucking threw his head back like he was JFK getting shot. And then when they showed the replay, Moore barely even touched his back, let alone his fucking head.
That was fucked. I mean,
And I wish the AFL would actually say, you know what, we're sick of player staging, that's a $5,000 fine. For anyone who throws their head back, and when we review it, if we deem that you fucking didn't get hit in the head and you threw your head back, you're copping the $5,000 fine. That fucking Zach Bailey smother of Cox, so Cox tackled Dana.
That was fucked.
That was fucking criminal. I understand, like, Bailey was following his opponent, but, like, the umpire should have said, get the fuck out of the zone there. And instead, Bailey's standing right next to Cox, and then the umpire says, I'm going to call play on. That's totally a fucking wrong decision.
No, he's in the zone. I would have thought that was a 50.
Yeah, that was just... Yeah, it should have been a 50. The Oleg Markov 50...
No, that was fucked.
That one kills me. McLuggage is on the ground and Markov takes a couple of steps back. I thought the whole thing of the understand and that sort of shit is we don't want players impeding the ball carrier. I'm pretty sure McCluggage was going to fucking kick it while he was still laying on the ground. And I understand, like, people go, oh no, you just meant to stand when you're fucking standing, but that was just a deplorable decision.
The stand rule across the board's fucked. I think it's one of those ones that'll quietly vanish in a year or two.
I mean, if they're going to leave it in, they should re-qualify it that, look, you can't move forward, obviously, and you can't move sideways, but we will let you pull backwards.
Why put conditions on it? Just get rid of it.
I agree they should get rid of it, but I know they won't, because they want the game constantly fucking in motion. One of the ones I fucking hated most was the last quarter, the April last quarter. I can't remember which umpire it was. It was a deplorable bounce that went crooked, went over Cox's head, and then fucking McInerney's running at him. So Cox has braced himself, and umpire's called Cox for blocking. He's had to do that because of your shit. Yeah, he Cox blocked it. Because it was a shit bounce. It was a fucking shit bounce. And then you've pinged him because that was a result of a shit bounce. Bow? No, it was a lot less funny than the shit bow. And then there was one like where Nick Daicos fucking tackled, I think it was Neil, and Neil just dropped it in the middle of the last quarter, and it was, again, play on. And I know this goes both ways. I can't remember which quarter it was. It would have been probably first, I think, when Cox was tackled within about 15 metres of their goals, and you just sort of threw it. That should have been a free. So, like, I'm just sort of fucking saying, there's a lot of fucking shit decisions in games.
But as we know in finals, they put the whistle away.
It's just... It's one of these things that, like, you know, you want to fucking hone in on a single thing. Like, I go back to 2018. If I was going to call one decision bad, in the last quarter before the Maynard block, it's fucking Varco tackles McGovern on the half-forward line. McGovern just drops it. And I remember watching it going, that is 100 times out of 100 times a hold on the ball, and you have not paid it. That was like the worst fucking decision I've ever seen. Because the block one, you can say, well, maybe he wasn't blocking, whatever the shit. But that was like just a textbook dropping the ball. There's a lot of fucking bad decisions. And if you only like to zero in on one, well, fuck you. I don't give a fuck. So,
yeah, but I think it's obviously fun for the media to paint the narrative that would have been an absolute, that the game could have changed. And it could well have.
Yeah.
You know, you're at a crucial moment. Neil would have probably had to have kicked inside 50 from about 70 metres out, you'd reckon. It becomes, is it something Danaher marks? It's a set shot and we get fucked in the arse again. You don't know. And I think that's what they like to portray. Let's all talk about this for the next 2 weeks. What may have been.
Well, here's the other thing too. You know, I mean, next year, 5 years, 10 years, no one's going to fucking talk back about that. Which is why, like I always say, fuck the excuses. Virtually no one's talking about the rocket point in 02 or whatever anymore. It's done. It's in the fucking history books. Whether it was right or wrong, you're not changing it. No one's going back and reviewing it and overturning decisions.
You can easily make it... it's like an exciting thing to say, what if that moment was something different? I think the reality of that game is Brisbane lost because across the board they weren't good enough, and they had a more non-contributors than us.
As you said,
Hipwood, Rayner, all these blokes that normally would go out there and probably give it a fair shake did.
Well, as you said, we dominated long patches and probably didn't convert as well as we did. We had like over 10 more shots.
We're deserved winners.
Let's go quickly through the team. Murphy, good in the first quarter.
Yeah, I mean, I was surprised to hear that he ruled himself out. It's an interesting move. Because the doctors, he's passed the concussion test, and he said, no, I'm not right, which is admirable. At the same time, though, wouldn't you be busting a nut to get back out there? This is a grand final.
He said his sight was blurry, and he said usually that's a sign for him that the concussion's going to be delayed. So,
do you think? I mean, you have to be viewing it from the aspect of I can't go out there and be at my best.
Yeah. Well, he also said like a concussion test for him. He's done it so many times, he just reels it off now. So maybe, whether you're concussed or not, that's just almost muscle memory now for him to reel off the answers they require.
Do you find it concerning with him that this happens a fair bit now?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's two aspects to this. One's the selfish side of you're going to play for the side, and if every time you get a bump, we have to worry if you're concussed and then have to reshuffle, that's a concern. Even more importantly, you have to look at like your quality of life coming out of football. You hear the horror stories of like Liam Picken and players like that who post football, they can't deal with bright lights and they can't focus and all that sort of shit. So he has to also look at his quality of life and say, am I just that one head knock away from, having a really fucked up life? And I'm sure I don't know what his personal life is like. I don't know if he's married, has kids or whatever, but like I'm sure there's probably a lot of those things he wants to do. What's more important, playing a game and potentially getting life impacting concussion long term, or saying I've done it.
We were talking about this, I think, at the pub after the game, and I think Johnny Platten's he's fucked. Scans of his brain, he's got a lot of dead areas and stuff from the impacts. And you've seriously, what you just said then, you've got to take it into consideration. From a selfish perspective, he's so fucking crucial. I want him out there, and I want him to be fit. I think something. It's about the way that he's playing. He's a little bit too reckless. He just needs to not throw himself in with so much abandon.
I don't know if he needs to consider stuff like wearing a helmet, whether that's going to lessen it.
I think there's a lot of belief that the helmets don't make any difference. There's still the impact and the sloshing around.
The concussion is the whiplash, so you don't have to actually hit anything. It's just moving suddenly.
Whether you pad the head or not, it's probably not going to make that.
That's not going to make a difference to that sort of thing. But whether it does improve other things like head knocks and whatever, I don't know. But I think also McRae that they should be looking at it seriously. I recall when they drafted him, they said they were surprised he was still there at pick whatever it was, 30 something. But they rated him the equal of Jaden Stevenson. You now look at him, you think he's gone way past Jaden Stevenson.
You and I have gone way past Jaden Stevenson.
Do you want to bet on that? Darcy Moore.
Not his usual productive self, but he was still effective.
Yep.
I mean, I think the thing is, and I still can't get my head around how the defensive unit without Murphy there functioned as well as it did. And he's got to get some well and truly kudos. He's only tall out there for the whole day. I think the thing that McRae said before is that without Murphy there, it's clearly fucked their rotations in defence, and they had blokes out there staying a lot longer out there, which makes their effort even more Herculean. It was incredible. I mean, if you want to take out of the game for a minute, his performance with the speech and everything was fucking phenomenal.
Yeah, Danaher's one of the few guys that actually tends to get the better of him, because Danaher plays so athletically also. So, no, I thought he was solid without being brilliant. Got some vital spoils as the game went on. His leadership's obviously really important.
Brilliant.
I compare, and this is not a criticism of Buckley, but I recall Buckley leading the team out in 02 and 03, and just that intensity. And you look at bloody Darcy Moore, he's just fucking
Come out
clapping
like
his hands and
someone
smiling.
told him the funniest joke ever.
Yeah, you know, he's looking around like, oh fuck, how good's this?
But I think that's what they were trying to portray.
Yeah, no, I agree.
This is about that sense of fun, and I think it was like almost a sense of wonder that we're here and how good does this moment feel? Because normally you have your fucking game face on at that point. That surprised me when it came out on the screen, just how much he was grinning like a Cheshire cat.
Yeah.
And you didn't know what to take out of there. I think you condition when you're normally looking at elite sportsmen, when they come out with the game face on, you get a sense of they're going to be fucking on here. It's like when Tony Shaw came out, the 90 flag, and they talked about it in that doco where he said to the boys beforehand, I'm fucking done losing these things. I'm not losing today. And that's that mantra that you sort of then have to motivate the side. I think this one was genuinely about just go out and enjoy the moment.
Jeremy Howe, like you wrote him off 9 times this year.
Just 9?
Yeah, I mean, because I actually thought he's pretty much finished, but I think that was his best game for the 2 years.
It was phenomenal.
Yeah.
Absolutely phenomenal.
Maynard?
Very good.
I'm just going to name them the way they're listed, because obviously they ain't playing these positions. Frampton?
Look, I think he did, like I said, it's going to be an unheralded or unsung hero type role. I think he executed it for 3/4 brilliantly.
Quaynor?
He was good. Very good.
Markov?
Good. A lot of run and carry when it counted. A lot of his kicking was very precise. He, again, just doing his role beautifully. I don't think he ended up with much more than, was it 12, 15 touches or anything like that? But, he didn't fucking even up.
Should they, as I said to you off camera, should they have the club have as merchandise the Markov mustache that he's, let the kid just put it on, strap it on, and run around for mustache?
I think there should be videos with Markov where he comes to clean the pool, and then hijinks ensues.
Don't go there. Scott Pendlebury.
Just back on Markov. I think what else he brings to that side is it's just like a calmness. I don't think he's fazed by too much. He just finds the bright side of everything, and I think that's infectious. He's become such a fan favourite as well.
Oh, is that his
fourth club? You can't help but love him.
So is that his 4th club? He played at Richmond.
Well, he's at the best one now.
Well, technically his 5th club, because he was at Richmond, he went to Gold Coast, got delisted, he was at Collingwood, he went to Carlton for a day, and he came back to Collingwood. So that's 5 clubs he's been at.
He went to Carlton, and at the end of the day, he said, fuck this shit.
He kept the gear.
I'm taking the training gear.
Pendles and Sidebottom.
Fucking hell.
What was that? The last quarter of, both were really good, but Pendles last quarter.
That was just something else. That was, that's that level of leadership and experience where, again, I think that's like that Tony Shaw thing where I don't want to lose another one of these, and I am going to do everything in my power to make sure that doesn't happen. And he pulled that off in spades.
I was just going to say, in the 2018 grand final, his back was fucked, and he was struggling just to bend and all that. And that's what I felt too. I felt like he was like, I'm not going to fucking lose this. I'm going to do everything possible to win this. Yeah. Sidey also was really good.
13 years between
longest
flags,
gap
longest gap, right?
Yep. Thanks, Eddie. Bobby Hill.
How fucking good. How fucking good is that guy?
Are you surprised that such a racist Collingwood crowd cheered him so vociferously when he won the Norm Smith?
I'm not going there. Look, we love him. And he deserves to be loved with everybody's heart. He did everything asked of him that day. I thought he had the Norm stitched up by half time. It was such an impressive display. You got fuckwits on X and stuff saying, "Oh, you won't see you get a Norm Smith for kicking 4 goals now." Fucking oath you do. It's everything else around those 4 goals that's important. And he just didn't stop the whole fucking day.
It was brilliant. I mean, it's a shame. Like, he had a couple of shots in the second half and he didn't convert them, but he was still...
That would have been the icing on the cake if he finished with 5 or 6.
He was still presenting. He was still an option. He was still creating play. He was really, really fucking good. And, like, of all the guys they recruited last year or this year, he's the one where you can see him becoming genuinely elite.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and they picked him up pretty cheaply from GWS.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, he's had such an interrupted start to his career. And so, like, I don't know how much... Did he play at all last year with the cancer thing that he was getting over? I wouldn't have thought you'd be playing much at all.
It's GWS. Who watches him?
Well, that's probably exactly the point. But he's come to us and he's been up and down throughout the years. He's vanished a bit at times. But fucking hell, you saved the best for last, mate. That was
I
brilliant.
mean, in fairness to him, he plays like a position that's small forward. Like, sometimes it just doesn't fall your way. And it's through no fault of your own. You try and it just, you're presenting
Yeah,
right.
I think there's an element though with his performance there where it's not. It's one thing to be on the end of an opportunity; it's another one to create it. And I think he did everything in his power to win that ball and do something productive with it. I love that mark that he took over Starcevic. Starcevic lost the ball in the sun, not Bobby. He was up there
He said he lost it for a little bit too.
Yeah, not for long.
My check.
Yeah, that one snap was superb, but I think he was well held.
Yeah, he got a few vital touches. Elliot.
Look, he surprised me. I thought on the day that he really wasn't in the game much at all. But when you watch the replay, he was quite involved in a few marking and moving the ball forward passages. I think, again, he didn't get anything. I think he only had the one shot for the one behind.
He had 2 shots. And
did he score any goals in this final series? Maybe one?
Oh, I think he scored one against he missed a couple of easy ones against Demons. I think he got one against GWS.
We talked about it before. The one thing that stood out with Elliot this year for me is I think time's catching up with him in terms of the crash and bashness on his body. This year more than ever, he's been slower getting up out of a lot, and he takes a lot of hits. He puts his body on the line. That I think it's not so much that the desire isn't there. It's like I think the fatigue and the hits. It's all slowly catching up with him.
I don't think it's slowly catching up. Josh Daicos.
Again, there's another one I thought that was a bit quiet, but he was quite prolific. What was his numbers in the end? Do we know?
No.
We don't do shit like that.
I don't do stats. You on stats, go to Pie Nation.
I think he got more than 3 and less than 30.
Jordan the Goey.
Superb.
Yeah.
Oh, no, he was quiet, I think, for a little bit. But he was there when the game needed him to be there, and then some.
Yeah, I think Dunkley really tried to blanket him totally out of it. So he was wearing a heavy tag. Bo McCreary.
Yeah, look, I think he would have been talking a different game if because what did he finish with 3 behinds?
Yeah.
And there were 3 probable gettable opportunities that he just missed out on. But he's hard running and he's hitting at packs and stuff like that. It's invaluable.
If I could say the one thing to McCreary, just sometimes be a little bit more selfish. There's times like he's trying to spot up players. It's just no, just go for it. He had that really good shot on the run from about 50, which sort of rolled to one side.
Yeah.
But there's times I think, even that first line he passed the hill where he sort of turned back inboard. I mean, I don't know what his left side's like, but I thought he could have easily just nailed that too. Mason Cox.
Great.
Yeah.
Great in the ruck.
Yeah.
I think in the last quarter too, he really started to get into the game around the ground as well a bit.
I took a couple of really good marks too. Nick Daicos.
Superb. Some of the stuff he does is just beyond freakish. And this is a 20-year-old in his second year that performed at that level in a grand final. I mean, fucking, how many superlatives can you give this kid? Not only that one with the clearance where as soon as the ball's gone, the camera can't even keep up with him.
Yeah.
He's there and he's doing the work. But that one on the boundary line where he's turned the lines inside and out, he's then dished the ball off, he's then taken the receiving handball, and then he's gone inside out again and gone sideways. I think, most players at that point, in that crucial time of the game, would have just gone straight down. But he's already assessing options, and he's picked a fucking beauty. Goes to Hoskin Elliott, goes to...
Chris.
Was it Chris or was it? Yeah, it was Chris. He kicked it just inside 50. And then you go. You just can't undersell his contribution. He doesn't play, we don't win.
Yeah, his vision awareness is astonishing, and his ability to sum up what's required in moments, and also to see, imagine he's considering alternatives. I can do this, or this, and to really examine that, and then to judge what's the most viable for him and the club, and what's actually going to be the most beneficial for the team. It's just fucking brilliant. You get fuckwits. You go to something like the Brownlow, and I saw. Because Lockie Neal got 3 votes that one game where he got 20 possessions and 5 clangers and gained 152 metres. And I saw someone on the next saying, he's not getting the cheapy 1-2 handballs and kicking out. And it's like, fuck, if you seriously think that's what Nick Daicos is only doing, you are seriously a fuckwit.
In the grand final, he had 11 contested possessions. Supposedly, he's an uncontested ball player.
Just it's...
Yeah, maybe look at the games, you fuckwits.
Yeah. Tom Mitchell.
Brilliant. I don't think his final series was pretty good. But his performance in this grand final was excellent.
And defensively, he was fantastic. He just kept tackling.
He ended up with a few norm votes, and rightly so.
He got 3 votes.
Bit of an unsung hero, that one. I think his people aren't talking enough about what he contributed.
Yeah. Jack Crisp.
Brilliant.
Yep. Already spoken about him. Darcy Cameron.
He was out there.
He took a couple of marks. But...
Yeah, I think the big difference was, and I think you quoted Mark W and E beating W.
Hey, Mark.
About, Cox goes in the ruck, we goal. Cameron goes in the ruck, they goal.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's an unfortunate thing. He just doesn't have the same presence as Coxie. Though I think he's nowhere near this year as effective as he was last year. I don't know whether he's still carrying something or whatnot. But he sings horses though on stage, so I guess he'll hang around next year.
Oscar Elliott, we talked about him a bit.
No.
Lipinski as sub came on second quarter.
Yeah, Fly was talking about that. I think the plan was with the heat and everything was to keep him on ice until just after half time.
Until about 6 p.m.
Until the game was sealed. And to bring him on where he just think he'd outrun everyone. But obviously the hand was forced and he come on a quarter earlier. Look, I don't think he really stood out all that much.
He did a few nice things.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd really like to see him next year when he's had time to really let that shoulder heal. Because there was times... Not just, like last week, because he had a pretty average game last week.
No,
but I think in the second half, or the part of the year he did play, he really struggled with physical contact.
I think the key thing in this game, he wasn't as bad as last week.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, he's not doing anything superb this year, but he's playing his role. I guess that's what you needed him to do, and he did it.
Jack Ginnivan?
He was a little bit disappointing. Quiet. Yeah, there's a couple of times, I think he chose the wrong option for his avenue to goal. The one that irked me the most was that fucking snap from about 40 metres out. That's a drop punt every fucking day of the week.
Yeah.
Even that little... And look, I think sometimes he gets a little bit wound up in the crowd moments, like that little dribble kick. That was, look, that's a hard one, I think, for that side of the ground where he was. It was never going to sort of comfortably bend back.
And he was also running full momentum.
He had 2 options though, and I think he should have chosen the unselfish one in that instance. And goals were paramount at that time. We were fucking missing everything. You just didn't need to add to it for something that felt like it was meant to be more for a highlights package than actually helping the team.
I think I've always thought that what makes the best players are the ones who make the right choices, and sometimes watching Ginnivan, it feels like he just wants to be a highlight reel. Like that snap. No, just go back and kick the boring drop punt, Like the smothers. Go in and just fucking hit the smothers there. That shot you're talking about, I just recenter it and all that sort of stuff. I actually just looked at him and thought that, I like, he's pretty much one touch. He gets that. He's obviously got talent and all that. But he really needs at times to sort of reevaluate the way he plays his game. And similarly with, like, he was fucking at the races the night before. Don't think there was anything wrong with it or anything, but look, you draw headlines. Just fucking lock yourself up in the room for a night, bloody go play your PS5 or whatever.
Well, McRae's told him to read the room.
Yeah, and that's, totally...
So the funny thing with that is you had Ned come out and there was a club statement and said, well, he's done nothing wrong. He's driven there and watched his mate's horse run that he's gone home. But then, as it's turned out, that McRae's had a bit of a pot shot at him. And I think the thing is like he's clearly talented, but he just needs to work on the upstairs department. I reckon they've got faith in him to start doing that. And sometimes players are just a little bit slower to mature as well. He's still only, 21, if that,
no idea.
20. He's still a kid. I think once the brain grows into that body, he'll be a far better player. I'm still taken with what he did last year. Kicking 40 goals isn't something you sneeze at.
I hope he does grow into it, because you get players like, I'll use Brendan Favola as an example. And I remember Brendan Favola going, he regrets all the buffoonery because people don't remember him for the sort of player he was, and he was a really good player. And he says something like that. I mean, he said it a while ago, and he shows up at Collingwood training in the Brisbane jumper, the twat.
He's a buffoon.
Yeah, but it's like, you're in this game a limited time, you have limited opportunities, you're in a season where you have actually been leapfrogged, not just by Hill and McCreary, but they preferred Harvey Harrison above you a few times.
Yeah.
And I know McRae said he trained really hard, he's his hardest trainer and all that sort of shit. But also, fucking people like Nick Daicos and that. Like, Nick Daicos talks about watching surreal highlights and shit. Just go watch fucking players you want to model yourself on and watch what they do. And then, work out. Like, this is what Surreal, I think, was a really good player for one reason. He knew when to lay up. He knew when to try and do the mercurial. And there's times Ginnivan, like that snap and that. Like, I mentioned, I think it was last year against Adelaide over there, where he took a mark straight out, 40 metres, and he snapped it. It's like, just fucking go back and do the boring thing, Bobby Hill did that repeatedly. He took marks straight out in front and he fucking just walked it in.
Yep.
So I'm actually pretty disappointed in someone I see who has a lot of potential and could offer a lot more. But, you need to understand that sometimes your game needs to be boring.
Yep.
So anyway, any final thoughts about the grand final itself?
It was just so fucking good to win.
Or the club in terms of winning the grand final?
It just felt un-Collingwood-like. And as I said, I don't think that's a bad thing to say that, because these are the games that we traditionally lose. We did everything to counteract that, I think, this year. I certainly don't think you can give McRae enough praise for the cultural changes that he's brought to this club. And I think the club went through a shake-up a couple of years ago that's...
Did you know about that? My God, I heard that we should have stayed with Eddie and Buckley for another 10 years.
I know a lot about that, as you do. But it's like, I think for the first time ever they've been receptive to things weren't working the way we would like them to work. And this change was exactly what we needed.
Look, I'll sort of backstep a little bit, and I think I've got to give Buckley some credit, because you see in that documentary from 2018, he talks about, like...
Fuck, how good am I? Is that documentary?
No, but he talks about, like, the club being seen as a chest-beating club. It was a bit about the hype. You read his autobiography from years ago. He talks about that. He talks about that moment that bloody Eddie Maguire had Rob Lowe in the winner's circle, and he's going like...
You can laugh about it now.
But Bucks is saying stuff like, we don't even let people who are like on staff for 20 years in that circle, but you're letting this guy in, and Eddie's going, but it's great for, for advertising the club. Yeah. And Bucks is like, but you could have just organised something the next day at training or some shit. So I actually think Buckley probably helped. Look, we've said it for a while, the club's has been full of such bluster and hype. And I actually think Buckley recognised that. Now, on the other side of that, his tactical coaching wasn't great. So it's actually good to fucking... You get McRae in, and obviously they've like coming from a culture of, just fucking... When McRae kept saying, play the minutes. Not fucking play the hype. Not fucking sell yourself as the great... Anyone who says, we're the greatest club in the nation after a flag, you're a fucking idiot. Because you're just going back straight into everything we've done.
Yep.
Every fucking time. So, and McRae and Lepage did that really well. I mean, I've got to give Jeff Brown credit, because... he just shut up this year for the most part. There's a few times I thought he probably should have spoken.
I think the key thing you're going to find too is, like, traditionally Collingwood, after winning a flag, would start to devour itself.
Well, that remains to be seen. We might still do it.
I don't think we will, though. I think there's enough control about...
I hope.
Well, I think this will be celebrated, and it should be celebrated, but when it's time to get the business face back on, the focus will be on flag 17.
Well, the big hope is you got McRae and Lepage who come from the Brisbane free-peat era, which Lee Matthews oversaw. I have no doubt that Lee Matthews, and he admits this, in 90 after winning the flag, he said, I let him celebrate too long. And he obviously learned from that. And when he went to Brisbane, he let him celebrate, but then reloaded them for the following year, which is why they won 3 in a row. You have Craig Kelly, who comes from that 90 era and knows they fucking celebrated too long. Graham Wright. So a lot of people in charge obviously have come from environments where they know how to reset, or from an environment, which is Collingwood in this case, where they know how to fuck it up, and let's not do that again. So, yeah, I totally fucking hope that. I really thought going into this final series, like I kept taping with Click, and I don't think those first two finals were particularly great. There were great moments. That Melbourne one.
No, when you think about it, this whole final series we won by a collection of 12 points.
But the grand final, outside of the inaccuracy, we played pretty much 100 minutes. And when Brisbane got on top, they deserved to get on top because they were playing well. It wasn't just, like fucking that Melbourne game. That second half was pretty much just, it was almost like a training drill. It was like McRae said, look, once you went in defence, just kick it 60 metres toward the centre of this ground and then let's reset back for a defensive posture. And the GWS game, that first half was dire, particularly that second quarter, with 2 goals up to half time. So fucking brilliant effort. Well done to Jeff Brown. I don't know exactly what he does outside of being president. Here is a bit of a magician with chip bowls, but
I had something to say then, but now you've derailed me. I can't remember what it was. It was brilliant though. Okay. Absolutely brilliant.
That'd be a first.
Wouldn't it? It was probably just brimful of positivity, though.
No, because I want to give thank yous, because people accuse us, particularly you, of being negative. So I actually want to sort of acknowledge people who did stuff.
Except the pricks who called me negative.
Oh, I don't want to call them pricks.
Sorry. Misinformed people.
So Craig Kelly has just come on board this year.
Yep.
Graham Wright is seen a lot as the architect of this success. So well done to him. Paul Licuri, who doesn't actually get acknowledged.
No.
Who drove the coaching appointment
process.
And I know there'll be idiots out there, let's say, who think they're in the know, who will say he had nothing to do with that, which is pretty funny. But he should get acknowledged for really putting together the process that went outside the Collingwood rationale, the normalcy to just go headhunt someone.
Well, I think that's the thing. It's always been the Collingwood way of just tapping someone on the shoulder saying, what are you doing for the next 3 years?
Yeah.
It's the first time ever that a selection process, looking at strengths and criteria and requirements of the club was brilliantly laid out. And you look at the 3 people that were shortlisted, being McRae, Kingsley and Voss, have all fucking performed really well this year as coaches. Yep. So it clearly shows that the process not only picked a great coach for us, it brought 2 out of the not the wilderness, but brought 2 into the front, and then they were picked up and they've done well.
And also I think Collingwood actually set up a template where clubs like Carlton and that were going, actually maybe we should be doing this a little bit differently. Because Collingwood, if you look back to 2021, which is Buckley's last year, they handled his exit really well. And you got to give Mark Porter credit also for that, because he was president at the time. He was standing off to one side. They handled his exit well, which put Robert Harvey in the caretaker role. But it gave them time to actually go, okay, well, now let's start interviewing people and start crossing people off the list. And, I recall there was fucking some, I don't want to say fuckwit, but some fuckwit was complaining on one of the message boards, apparently they got every person who's coaching on the spreadsheet. It's like, well, why wouldn't you fucking canvass every single
That's the whole
person?
Point. You just don't go to 4 and say, well, it's going to be one of these. You want to look at the entire spread of who's available. Yeah. And that wasn't only just assistant coaches, it was potential senior coaches as well. Yeah. And that's what you want to do, is you look at the complete market out there and say, look, you probably have to acknowledge that there's maybe some that you are never going to get your hands on, but you want to look at the skill sets they have and use them as a comparison to what you're looking for. Maybe it makes you think in a different direction, but that's the whole thing about it, is you keep your options wide open and you cast the net as wide as you can, and you look at all the variables that change. You think you put something together that's going to work, but then unknowns come in and makes you revisit what you've done, and it makes it a better process at the end.
And we know
it's not fucking rocket science.
Apparently it is. But we know also there was selection criteria applied, which weeded out a lot of people in terms of not being right for that job. Yep. Although, I'm going to use Nathan Buckley's example. Look, Buckley's potentially the best player, arguably the best player I've seen, but the coaching appointment was we don't want you to go to North Melbourne or Richmond, so here's the job. I'm sure he would have passed all the interviews and that, but if he was going for the job when they were interviewing this time around, there's no way they would have given it to him on the back of no apprenticeship or just 2 years apprenticeship. No real coaching experience of his own, no real developmental coaching and stuff like that. So if you look at what they did, how meticulous and exhaustive it was to actually find the person who was going to be the right fit for fucking Collingwood to come into that club at that time and to. I mean, I don't think they probably expected that level of turnaround either, but.
No, but I think the key thing out of it all too was we just didn't go the favourite son route.
Yeah, well,
you want to bring IP in from other clubs that are doing things successfully, and I think that and the combination of my 1 in 3 theorem, which I'm going to retire after this game because it shouldn't be reapplied. We were due.
Well done, Paul Lucuria. But the big question is, now that McRae's on the flag, should we sack him and bring in someone else?
Yeah, well, let's make Scott Pendlebury captain coach next year.
That sounds good to me. So big thank you to Craig McRae, obviously.
Absolutely.
We sort of mocked the message at time. I mean, he was still saying it, we're going to get better and all this sort of stuff. But, and him and his coaching staff, I don't know who they all are, Justin Lepich, Craig Bolton, Hayden Skipper, is he still there?
No, isn't it one of the...
Developmental coaches?
Yeah. That Jared Waite's...
Jared Waite, the fitness coach.
Yeah, so I reckon he's done an epic job.
Yeah, compared to the 10 years previously and the stuff we were experiencing there. So,
Scott Selwood, is he still...
I think he's still there, Scott Selwood.
As McRae said, with he gets that Jock McHale medal, but that's there for the entire coaching staff. And it's a really good point that he makes. Because as he said, people just look at me as being the one, I've got the rollerblades on and I'm doing it all. I think that was one of the weaknesses that Buckley had, that he did portray that as, he's such a control freak, I have to be doing it all. But it has to be the sum of the parts. And I think, it's almost at the point now that award, you award it to the winning coach, but at the end of the day, there should be other awards that are spread out, because it's the entire coaching panel that wins you a flag, not just one bloke.
You think they should break the medal apart, and then when they come together, it'll be
like the Wonder Twins.
Yeah, and they'll all put it together, and they'll say whatever.
They can then form into a giant robot.
Yeah. So, thank you to. I don't know if I've missed out anyone at the club.
Are you thanking me now?
No, I'm not thanking you. And also, thanks to the club for fucking following up on the membership, the Legends ticketing debacle. They got on top of that really quickly. So this is really weird, thanking people.
There was a good moment. I think it made it onto the TV. I did see it on X. Maybe it wouldn't have done, but I think when it was all said and done, the Premiership was won. Later on that night, they got all the staff onto the ground for a photo. I don't think I've ever seen that done before. Maybe they do it, but we've just happened to have someone there taking a happy snap. I thought that was fucking brilliant too. Yeah. Because it's about everyone.
It's about a sense of community.
Don't get me started.
In jokes.
But I think it is everyone that contributes.
Yeah.
It takes a village to raise a child, as they say in the classics. It takes an enormous bunch of people to make a club tick. Yeah,
and they've gotten the balance right. Also, a big thank you to David Hatley, who off his own bat spearheaded the petition.
Yep.
I know there's a lot of people in that EGM groups who sort of run around going, we did it. It's like, no, it was David Hatley pretty much, and they fell in the wake.
Yeah, number one catalyst. Well done, mate.
Yeah. So well done to him. And you trace it back to that point as whether, I think there was things in motion at the club once someone got out of the way. And I don't want to name who that was, but he could be seen celebrating the Maynard being cleared of the tribunal at a dinner.
Interestingly, that person in question, and look, they were welcomed into the staff after party dinner thing, probably deservedly so. I think there'll be some means to recognise the contribution that Bucks and Eddie made over the journey. As long as they don't hang around like bad smells. Do you have a problem with them being back in the fold?
What, in any official capacity?
Not in an official capacity, but just having the presence there. I think it was inevitably going to happen. I remember we weren't particularly thrilled about the notion at the time, but tensions were high.
I don't fucking want you there, Eddie. All right, so that dinner where you got up, Monad's been cleared, cheering it out in the restaurant. I don't want that sort of energy anywhere near the club. And I know he's just having a joke, but that's the sort of shit that fucking pissed me off.
But you'd think, working in the media, and then we're obviously going to talk about this. So I think Daisy Thomas was at the dinner, and he filmed it and put it on socials. I don't think at any point Eddie would have said, film me, and did it. I think he was like a victim in that instance. But you should know better. That there's always someone there, and it wouldn't just necessarily be one of our own, but there's always someone in a venue with a camera, and it's not a help.
But that's what I was going to say. It's a public fucking venue. So we're living in the age of phone cameras. Someone could have said Eddie Maguire and just started like filming him because they were just going to film him. Go, hey, I saw Eddie Maguire, and then suddenly he gets up and starts shouting shit out. It's like, no, I don't want that sort of fucking bombastic, rambunctious, disruptive energy anywhere near the fucking club. The club's finally gained some humility and composure. Yeah, you know, it's like you go back to 1990. We were fucking from 86 to 90. We were great in the administration. Won the flag, and all the fucking heads went off again. And Alice McAllister were the greatest show on earth, and all this sort of shit. Just stay focused. And like, I'll say it now. I'll be the negative one instead of you for a change. All right, you won 16. Fantastic. Celebrate it. Reset for fucking 17.
Yeah, I agree.
And not in 4 years. And like, I really love what Nick Daicos said. Like, this is an addictive feeling. You know, success. You got to fucking reset. Celebrate it now. And I was saying this in 210 and people scoffed at me. Fucking reset. You know, have whatever time you're going to have off. Then reset. McRae, you come from a back-to-back-to-back culture. You know,
I don't think he'll let it happen. I think he's wily enough to refocus quickly. I don't think he's going to want to sit on this one flag.
No.
Yeah, I think we probably, and we might do another episode looking at this
it's quitting after this one.
Where we can maybe look at what the future looks like. But at the moment, I think we might have one more crack in us. But there's no dynasty coming out of that group. So I think that's where that focus will be. You've got one more shot, I think, next year. And then there'll have to be some rejigging to be done.
It's really curious what they'll do with Pendlebury and Sly Bottom. They're the two older statesmen.
Excuse me.
They're the ones that are going to be hard to replace. Obviously, they're not what we'd qualify as elite players anymore. You know, they're very good players. They really, and you know, I thought we were quitting. But you really need to find replacements for them, and you haven't had like access to high draft picks, so that's the one issue. Going back to 06 to 010, like I really thought we were going to struggle coming out of that Buckley, Burns, Lucuria, Rocker, Wakeland, Clement, Presti era. But, you know, then they just got Pendles and Daisy, and Swan came up and Cloak and Reed and Brett. So they really, but they also had access to top picks. So, you know, I don't want to sort of really go into too much of that. But, like, as you said, they've probably got, like, another shot in this group. But then they've got some age concerns to look at. And you'd probably want to start staggering some of those departures, even if it means tapping a few players on the shoulder and say, look, you're less likely to be playing senior football next year. Just finally, just going back to the fucking Brownlow, what do you think? I didn't watch any of it because I just think it's a farce.
I think this year it proved it's even more of a farce. Yeah, I think this is the first time that the umpires weren't given access to the champion data after the games. So you're relying on them from their ground level view to nominate. And look, I think for the most part, you couldn't argue with some of it, but geez, there were some fucking strange ones.
There's always been some strange ones, but there's some really strange ones. The problem always have the Brownlow. You know, you say it's the best and fairest, but it's not really the best and fairest because if you're like Nick Daicos playing in the side where maybe some other players are taking votes from you, you might not get the fair go of someone at a club where the votes aren't being taken from them. So I actually just think you don't get real parity across the voting board in something like that.
No, and it's just become too much of a midfielder's award as well. I think the coaching votes are the more accurate ones.
Yeah, totally agree.
And I think that's a better indication of performance rather than the incompetent umpires just saying I think it was him. Because there was one... there was a Sydney game where a guy was subbed off about halfway through the game, got 3 votes.
Was that Amadi, I think?
Yeah, I mean, it must have been a fucking impressive performance. All the Sydney players were pissing themselves laughing.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you get that so fucking wrong? You know, the one you talked about with Lachie Neale getting 3 votes for 20 possessions and 10 clangers with 150 metres gained. Geez, it must have been an impressive fucking 10 clangers. Yeah, you clearly got them blatantly wrong in that instance. What made you pick that? Did you just have this fucking belief that he was good? Surely there's about 74 umpires out there at any given time that collaborate on this decision. I'm assuming. I don't know. It just seems to be. It's like and we talk about this every year. It just feels like it needs to be tightened up a little bit better to be more reflective of the actual performances at the time. And I'm not saying that because I think Nick Daicos is always going to be up against it without the
last 3 games.
But you've got to seriously look at him and think that was a fucking brilliant performance in the Brownlow voting.
And there's probably games he didn't really, again, I mean, it always happens that players who dominate sometimes don't get votes.
No, well, that game you got 40 possessions, you got nothing.
And 3 goals, I think he kicked. But again, you get like that GWS game where we killed them by 12 goals or whatever it was. So there's going to be a lot of people taking votes, and that's one of those things like you poll different people and they might have given different votes out and shit like that. I really think if you want the best, it should really be the best, not just sort of like...
Best of the best.
Yeah, and I think they need to work out a way where they're actually looking at defenders and forwards also.
Yeah, there needs to be a lot more inclusivity because that's the buzzword these days. Were you aware of that?
But you look at like, I don't know what the Norman Smith medal record's like in terms of who gets it. I mean, I know Dusty's won 3. I don't know who that tends to favour predominantly. But Bobby Hill obviously played more as a small forward, but then he was coming up as a sort of almost like a roving mid at times. But, that was really reflective of the BAG, regardless of his position.
I think so, yeah.
And that's what you want. Bobby Hill, you look at the votes, I mean, I just scrunched them up, but he got like 15 votes, and the next best was like 5 or 6 or something. So he was clearly the BAG. With the Brownlow, there's a lot of contentious ones. And you go back to Swan losing it or not winning it in 10, where every other media award had him clear in front, and the Brownlow predictor said he was going to get 98 votes or whatever it was. He didn't get it. And that was one where you go, well, that's a fucking joke. And Judd got 3 votes against Collingwood when Collingwood beat Carlton by 9 goals. Mm. And then the following year, Judd had a really good year, and I thought Swansea was good but not great, and he won it, which is... I know people say it evens, it evens out, but it's like, I don't want it to fucking even out. I want you to be accurate at the time.
It's your biggest award in the competition, and it's the one that's the most haphazard.
Yeah, so anyway, I mean, we could ramble about that for ages.
Doesn't matter because we're fucking premiers.
Yeah, thank you, Collingwood. Thank you, Darcy Moore, all the players.
I'd like to thank God and the Academy.
Okay, that's nice to know. Who else would you like to thank?
Nobody really.
Oh, yes, you're so fucking negative. Any very last thoughts?
What do you want me to say?
I don't know, we're not coming back next year, are we?
Well, that'll remains to be seen.
I thought we had that discussion off screen.
We're gonna finish on a high. Who knows? Maybe. I don't know.
Later.
Maybe. Did you press record?
Go to that light and turn it off. I'll turn this one off. Oh, and then we can close it out with like the dark. Just don't get in the camera's way.
Is it still recording?
Yeah.